Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
For those of you in Winston-Salem, we're in a different room today, and I'd actually like to talk around and actually look in your eyes, but I'm not going to be able to do that because I've got Richmond looking at me too. But that's why I'm up here staring at my screen rather than at all of you. So, Richmond, give me a thumbs up, thumbs down. Let me know that you're actually getting this. We don't know about the network or the restrictions. Good, thanks. Okay, so let's do a quick review. Actually, not quick. Let's take a step back, and Harper and Balance and I discussed yesterday evening, and we're taking temperature of the room, figuring out, okay, where is everybody? And multiple people came to all of us and said, you know, I'm really not feeling it right now. It's not working. We need to do something. Am I falling behind? Is this for me? And the answer to all those things is that's completely normal. You've had 4 days to gather into your brain and try to accept what in a university environment would probably have taken you a year in 4 days. Okay? So pat yourself on the back. You haven't fallen over dead. You're good. We're going to spend today reviewing everything. So we're going to start from scratch, and we're going to show you how much you already know. And we're going to slow the pace down today, and we're going to make sure everybody is on the same page, because we're going to finish up kind of the UI today. We're going to say, okay, this is all there is. We've run, we've sprinted, and the reason we're doing that, it's not because we like to see you suffer. It's because, harking back to David and his approach to things, you know, just Google it, get on the job, be the guy that says, yes, I can solve that problem. Those are all absolutely correct. At Sightsource, we're not the 50th percentile. I don't like to toot my own horn, but we're probably closer to 95 percentile, maybe a little bit higher. And how did we get here? We got here by not lying to ourselves. We got here by saying, you know, I'm not going to compare myself to the guy next to me. I'm going to compare myself to the best in the world. We live in, I mean, Richmond's larger than Winston-Salem, but the only way to become the best in the world is to forget about geography. We got the internet these days. You've got to look at your own skills and be honest with yourself about, do I really know how to do this really well? And drill yourself. And when you think you've got it, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? I got to get faster. You got to train, continuous improvement. And I'm not gonna go back into motivational speaking. That's not me. My role in Sightsource is managing director. What that means is, and Harper's is actually chief technical officer. So he is a much better developer than I am. And I don't lie to myself about that. I don't lie to other people about that. I'm a little bit quicker sometimes. He's a lot better. If I want to know how to do things the right way, I go ask him to this day. He is the best practice guy. When it comes to business and getting projects done, he comes to me. It's like, okay, how do you think we should do this? And we've been working together. We've known each other for over 20 years. We've been working together in a small business as partners for over 9. So we know each other. We know how to work together. The reason I'm mentioning this is because I want to give you a little peek into what it means to work for Sightsource, what we're looking for. I'm not typing fast and going at lightning speed because I want to scare you. I'm doing that because that's how I do it. And I obviously could slow down, but I want to show you that what we're asking of you is, you've had 4 days of this. If we pick you up and want to mentor you, we're going to give you months, 6 months, a year, and we're going to help you every day. And we're not going to expect you to be anywhere near as fast as one of us. After a year, after 2 years, I would hope that you continue to challenge yourself. The only way you know that you're not doing great is to see that, oh, there's more to learn. And I can tell you right now, there's always more to learn in technology. That's one of the things I love about this career. About a year and a half ago, we got kind of tired of the web platform. As you can see, we've got like 5, 6 different technologies that we use, and normally developers use one of those, so that's like the 50th percentile. We can do it all. And the only reason we can do it all is because we do something, we get bored, want to learn something new. Or we learn it, we picked up Elixir about 2 years ago. We picked it up for this reason. Harper found out, just through public forums, that Facebook bought a little company called WhatsApp, I believe it was WhatsApp, for $2 billion. Why did they buy them? It was a small company, like 10, 15 people. They bought them because they were running 2 million plus concurrent sessions on a single server. That, I don't know if you realize how big that is in technology, but if you can do that, your total cost of ownership goes way down. You've got more efficient technology than the next guy, and you're going to beat the pants off them. So they bought them for the expertise in this really, really small, obscure language, and they bought them for the expertise. Come show us how to make Facebook, one of the largest technology companies in the world, better, faster, more competitive. Harper, that's his job, CTO, says, okay, why don't we do that? If we had all the employees we did at the time, and we did, and we said, hey guys, let's go learn this. We're going to do this in 2 months. And it's like, no, I'm C#, you know, what are you talking about? It's like, you know, you pay me to do C#. I get paid well, you know, I'm doing projects. So we offered it to them, but we didn't mandate it, you know. Harper and I, that's our job, especially Harper's. So he got into it, he learned it. He shared it with me, and it's like, wow, this is cool stuff. And what I love most about it is not so much the syntax, because the syntax, you're going to see it's all the same. I'm going to show you some other languages just in a minute, not so you have to do them right now, but just show you where we're going and show you how much you already know. But we learned Elixir because it can do a couple things that we didn't have tools in our tool belt to do at the time. One is we wanted to be able to build world-class competitive applications on the scale of Facebook. And we wanted to be able to have something in our tool belt that we could say, we can run on Linux, Windows, and we can do things that other companies can't do. The only limitation is knowledge. It's all out there. It's all open source. So all we had to do is go pick up the technology, learn it, bang our heads against the wall for a while, which is kind of fun after a while. The first time it feels like, oh, am I any good? It's like, no, that's part of the normal process. We do that. You know, you do Elixir, you do something brand new, it's going to take a while. It's normal. It has nothing to do about your intelligence, nothing to do about your quality as a human being. That's the job. And if you're not doing that, it's like what David said. If you're not doing that, you're doing it wrong. Because you're in your little bubble, you're telling yourself, oh, I'm good. I don't want to hurt myself by exposing myself to new things and not knowing how to do them. That's what this job's all about. For instance, and it's not easy all the time. This week, I know you all have normal life going on. So do we. The reason we're hiring is because we need more people to help us. The reason we're trying to teach you these things, and the reason we're trying to ramp you up and give you all the technology and show you where we want you to be in 2 or 3 years, I'm not expecting you to have this in 4 days. But I'm showing you where, if you had this in 4 days, you wouldn't have to learn anything for the next 2 or 3 years to be a great Sightsource contributor. But I'm giving it all to you because I'm a big picture type of guy. So, are you going to get in 4 days? Absolutely not. But today we're going to repeat the technology after I get over this, you know, setting the standards. We're going to do that all day long. We're not going to introduce anything new in terms of technology. We're going to start from HTML. We're going to go through CSS. We're going to talk about JavaScript. We're going to talk about jQuery. And then we'll probably spend a little bit more time on jQuery and show you, okay, now that you've seen it the second time, let's take a step back and say, what is this all about and how do you use it? Beginning back to Sightsource. Peek behind the curtain. What are we looking for? I told you a few of them, of the interview situations I exposed that we're looking for somebody with empathy because we're a consulting firm. Well, I've got an MBA, and you can't have a card-holding MBA member without having a 2x2 grid and having off-site retreats to talk about interpersonal skills and company values and all that stuff. So we have a list of like 20 things that are our core values. We know them. I'm not going to tell them to you because I don't want to be gamed in the next interview with you. But I'll tell you the top 2 or 3. And if you understand where we're coming from, you're going to understand why we're doing this, why we're presenting it in this way. Number 1 is transparency. I'm not going to hide the real world from you. I don't lie to myself about how good or bad I am. When I see that I'm subpar, I go out and I make myself better. I practice. I work hard. That's how I got this fast. That's how I know these languages. It's not because I'm smart. It's because I've been doing it for 20 years. Transparency. So transparency is about don't lie to yourself. Don't lie to anybody else. Look at it for what it is, good or bad, and go on. And internally, it's not only that. It's about transparency with our internal stuff. We had an off-site retreat. We're a small company, so we can actually have some fun that large corporations can't. We went down. We used to have 2 off-site retreats a year because people were all remote. And we would get together at places like, I don't know, Hilton Head, South Carolina, or we would go to Nashville, or we'd just converge somewhere because people were all over the place. And we'd have mostly just a party. We'd get together for a couple days a weekend, catch up, see each other face to face because we're all human. But at one of those, I said, Harper, let's just show them all the financials. We're a private company. We don't have to do that. We don't have to tell the public about it. But I felt it was important. It's like, here's every dollar we're making. Here's every dollar we're spending. Here's how much we made or lost last year. Here's how we're doing month by month. Because we do that. I've got the MBA. I've got to do that. We showed it not because we had to, because I wanted every person on the team to understand why I asked them to do certain things. I believe, don't trust me to make your decisions for you. If you want to leave the company, I want you to have the information in hand to make that decision properly. So I wanted to show them. We're going to get into this technology because we have these 3 large projects, and it was not just financials, it was financials related to project work. And it was, this is worth this much to the company, and here's our margin, and here's how much we're going to make, and this is how much we gained or lost in the past 6 months. This is why you, Brooke, or you, Gary, and the actual employee names, you need to do this for us. And there were no questions. There wasn't like half an hour meeting later, it's like, okay, I really need you to learn this. No, I just showed them exactly the decision-making stuff that I was using to actually put them on the project. And it makes life so much easier. So we're not extreme transparency. I don't go out of my way to tell you all my personal details. I don't like Twitter. But when it comes to sharing business information, I'll tell you whatever you need to know about the company if you work with us. So transparency is one. Continuous improvement is another one. And that's how I go fast. I'm going to slow it down a little bit today, so don't worry about that in terms of actually how I present. But continuous improvement is how I got to where I am. That's how Harper got to where he is. We don't rest when it comes to making ourselves better in our career. We don't stop at the 50th percentile. The 50th percentile numbers, and I can pull them back up, they make good money. And if you're in it, and if you're going to go on the job and you're going to Google things when you don't figure it out and then forget about it and come back later, that's 50 percentile, and you make a good living. There's a lot of scarcity in software development. If you want to be closer to 95, 99 percentile, that's really what we do. We don't stop at the 50th because we're not doing it for the money. David and I share a lot of things, mostly intensity. But his intensity is focused on different things. He likes adrenaline. If you didn't get that, it's pretty obvious. My intensity is more about being the best version of myself, reaching my potential. Money stopped being interesting a long time ago. After you have a certain modicum of income, it's what are you going to do with the rest of it, It's more about you have to be good, you have to be able to pay your bills, and then it's about what are you really motivated by? And we're motivated by being the best possible developers we can be. That's why we get up in the morning. We could have hired people off the street, we could have given them interviews, we didn't have to go through this work. And I'll tell you, this is not easy for us either. This week, right now, I've got a 40,000 person deployment going out for a small company out of Raleigh that we did their initial system for about 7 years ago. And I started it, and at the time, we used technologies like 2 years, it's like beta. And at the time, 7 years ago, because we know things are going to get in there and it's just going to atrophy and it's going to be horrible 4 years down the road. That was 7 years ago. So about 2 months ago, they came to us and said, we have a huge new client coming on. We need all these changes. And I said, that's horrible timing, because I knew this course was coming up. And a week and a half ago, they said, okay, go live. We need to have it done by next Wednesday. I said, I don't know if I can do that. And they said, we have to have it done by next Wednesday. Actually, they said Monday, and I negotiated them to Wednesday. So, actually, I tried for next Monday so I could have the weekend. And they said no. So that's what I did over the weekend. And every day, and the reason I've been popping out, especially during David's sessions, I've been actually doing things for them to make sure they've been testing and doing things like, oh, we need this change too. Okay. In the evenings, Harper and I get together, we talk about the class. We work till like midnight, 12:30 coding. Because we need people to help us, you know? It's, normally we're coding, we're actually doing our project work, so that doesn't stop. So right now there's a 40,000 person deployment going on, people doing online registrations, and I'm keeping that up. So I'm coding. When I saw Jamelia was like 2:30 in the morning and she wasn't alone coding, I wasn't up at 2:30 in the morning, but I was up at like 12:30, so I know what it's like. I'm there too. It's not easy. Now, hopefully next week, I don't want to do that. Hopefully it's going to be relaxed. I can focus all on the course. But I'm just letting you know you're not alone. We're there with you. And we're doing this because we believe in you and we believe in ourselves. We believe in making this a success. It's not easy, but it's worth it. So, enough motivational stuff probably for now. Let's review some technology. So let's get back to that first day I showed you this diagram. And I don't know if that's big enough for the people in Richmond. Actually, what am I thinking? They got a 20 by 20 screen. So we're down here, web user interface. So we haven't talked about Angular. Paul Taylor, coming in from the UK, is going to talk about that toward the end. We've talked about JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. We also talked about Git, which is not even on here. It's important. JSON. What is JSON? We haven't really explained that, but you already know it. You just don't know it. It has to do with JavaScript. You know that object? You know, when I think it was David that explained this is how you create an object with the squiggly braces in JavaScript. What modern developers do is they take a JavaScript object and they take all the spaces out and they save it as a file or they put it in memory in a variable and they can pass it around like a football. So if I want to talk to an API, API is Application Programmers Interface. That's like the toaster thing I sent you yesterday. The API for toaster would be, I've got to know the functions that toaster gives me so I can use it. That's called an API. And there are countless APIs out there. And the way you work with them as a developer, nobody's going to hold your hand and say, this is how it works. They have some documentation because developers aren't very friendly. They're going to put it out there, and it's like, I wrote the code. It's your problem to figure out how to use it. So sometimes there's nice documentation, sometimes not. So the API, most of these APIs out there, somebody name me one. The Twitter API, Facebook API, Google API. Every one of them talk JSON. What does that mean? That means that they expect you to send a JavaScript object in text as an instruction. And they're going to give you back a JavaScript object as data. So it's not only code, but if you were to take that variable, like your object variable, and send that and receive it, now all of a sudden you can talk with all of the rest of the world in code. We haven't got there, but I wanted to let you know. You see the little green arrow here? JSON is the vernacular. It's the language that developers use to talk primarily between the web user interface and JavaScript and everything else in the world. It used to be XML, it used to be other things, but now it's pretty much JSON. So you already know that. We're going to review it today. We haven't covered application server. We haven't covered database. We've covered this. in 4 days. And like I said, in a typical university course, you would take a year, because you'd go through, okay, let's learn the internet architecture, which we covered in like half an hour. You'd learn HTML for probably a course. You'd learn CSS for probably a course. You'd probably learn JavaScript for 2 courses. And then you might have been exposed to jQuery. We did all that in 4 days. 5, because we're going to do the same thing today. So we don't expect you to know how to do this the first time you see it. We do expect you to keep trying. Come back at it. What we're trying to expose to you is this is the 99th percentile of developers. This is what they know right now. If you can set your sights on that, and in the course of the next 6 months to a year, not only if you come to work with Sightsource, but if you work anywhere, decide what type of developer you want to be. You can make a very, very good living at the 50th percentile, where you don't really have to remember and know how to do anything. You just kind of, you know how to figure it out. That's fine. If you want to push yourself and become one of the best possible contributors that you can be in this career, that's what we do. So that's us, as an aside, kind of the mentality, the personality that we're looking for. I didn't start out like this. As a matter of fact, I was telling Ballant this morning, you know, it looks like you've been doing this, you were born with it. No. The first time I taught myself a language, it wasn't in the boot camp with Kathy. I learned this natural database language, which was mainframe based, and I quickly learned that you can't do that off a mainframe. So it's like, okay, I can't go build apps. I can't do anything outside of work, which is no fun, because I actually wanted to improve. So I taught myself HTML a little bit, and it took me, the first time I taught myself HTML, I taught it myself from a book, and it took 2.5 months, and we covered it in a day with you. So it's not fair. I'm being a hypocrite. It took me 2.5 months. Okay, so, you know, pat yourself on the back. Nobody was pushing me to learn HTML like we're pushing you. Give yourself a break. Ask questions. And you're going to get over the next few weeks or months. So what did I teach myself? I taught myself Visual Basic 6. And I couldn't go to work and ask Kathy, because she didn't know Visual Basic 6. I couldn't ask anybody else. Nobody knew it. But I knew it was important because that, at the time, this was late 90s, people were still writing Windows executables and deploying them. It was the cool thing to do. So I wanted to do that. Also, after writing in text and paths all day in the DEC OpenVMS mainframe, I wanted to do something with colors. It wasn't just black and white and green. So it wasn't just text. So it was so cool to be able to have an image and load it on the screen and then move it around and buttons and all that stuff. Now it's commonplace, but back then it was cutting edge. So I took this book home and I tried to teach myself Visual Basic 6. And the first week, I bought a little laptop computer, and it was secondhand, and I was trying to set up my development environment. And I deleted a Windows System folder, and I had to get a friend who knew hardware to rebuild it for me. So I didn't start very well. A week later, I got the computer back. It's like, okay, I'm not going to touch that folder again. And I eventually, over the next 3 months, of every night, not every night, almost every night, and most weekends, okay, how do I do that? How do I look? And we didn't have the internet forums. We didn't have Stack Overflow. Those things weren't as commonplace as it is today. So you got it a lot easier. It was just the book. And I would look online. I would Google things. I would look on, it was Yahoo and Metacrawler and other things back then. And it wasn't very much help, because a lot of times coding wasn't as commonplace as it is today. But over the course of 2.5, 3 months, I had a very buggy application called Maraba Raba. I had a friend at work who was straight from Africa, and he told me about, I don't know if it was Kenya or somewhere, it might have been Kenya. He said from his country, this was a specific game from his country that, as far as he knew, didn't exist anywhere else. And he asked me, you know, you're learning Visual Basic 6. Could you build me a little game where I could play that? And he told me the rules. I didn't know the rules. And I don't know if you all know the game Wari. It's like a piece of wood about this big, and it's got little rocks, and you move the rocks into little holes. It's kind of like that. So he had to explain all the rules to me, and about 2.5 months later, I came back and I had a 3.5-inch floppy disk, and I had the executable. It's like, here, go try it. And he tried it, and it was full of bugs, but it worked.
Raise your
I'm in third grade.
Question was, how many of you have actually held a 3.5-inch floppy disk? And yeah, people are showing their age. So I'm trying to tell you these stories because that's where I started. And that's where probably a lot of you are starting. It took me 2.5, 3 months to build that buggy little application without any help. If you can get with help in 2.5, 3 months, 6 months, I'm going to be very happy, any of you. Not just with us. It's going to be a validation that this was all worthwhile. I want to see you succeed. So, in order to do that, I'm going to slow down. So, let's get back to technology. Let's start with HTML. HTML, what's it used for? Why are we even talking about HTML?
Presentation app up front for any things you write for the internet.
Somebody says it's presentation, and that's absolutely right. That's what the browser speaks. The browser understands HTML. So we need to understand how to give the browser something it understands. So why are we talking about CSS? Well, let's talk a little bit about, I don't know. Let's go to Slashdot. Everything on the internet pretty much is, let's see. Well, they've got the right-click disabled. How'd they do that? With JavaScript, probably. Okay, so let's just pull up some random site on the internet. What do we see here? HTML. HTML. What's ahead? You all know that. It's like, this is no longer scary. You are a developer. You just need more practice. Script, okay. What's that? That's a little bit of JavaScript. What's that? That's a little JavaScript file. Notice the little JS. They're just pulling it in. That's called a library. We know that. And as a matter of fact, in the real world, you often see multiple libraries on the same page. No big deal. Here's a script. They're actually writing some code. That's just JavaScript. What do you know? There's some CSS. And I had no plans to pull up Slashdot. I just ran in whatever popped in my head. It's all there. In 4 days, we've covered all the vernacular of the internet on the front end. So what is this? We actually can decipher what that is doing. Style type text CSS. So they're going to say a little bit of CSS in here. And what does that dot mean? It's a class. Y'all have been listening. What is that crazy thing?
RGB code.
It's RGB code. Y'all are scaring me. So the first two, that's red, green, and blue. Just hexadecimal. It's scary, but... And nobody, I couldn't tell you what color that is. I'm not a computer. You pop that into some other place and look up what that is. And that's what they did. They went on the color picker and they copied the number and they pasted it there. That's how they got that. More JavaScript, more JavaScript. We're still in the head. So what do you know? Title tag. Title goes in the head. There. That's, okay. That's their title. And it's right up here. Meta tags, which are just kind of informational. That's more for search engine optimization, SEO type stuff. Link, what is that? Oh, that's CSS. Nothing new. We're saying go load that CSS file. As a matter of fact, if we click on it, we'll see a bunch of nasty CSS. See, that's what it looks like when they minify things. See all the spaces taken out? Can anybody tell me why they took all the spaces? Speed. They made the file smaller. So when it came down to my browser, it took a split second less. Question?
Is another byproduct of that taking storage space on a server? Not only speed, but it takes up less size on a server when you've got thousands of those or hundreds of millions of those?
Usually CSS is so tiny relative to the images and other things. So the question was, do they do that to save space on the server? And also, disk space is so cheap these days, so yeah, it's not even a concern. Question?
Even images are minified though.
Yeah, minification, making things, so Mudit pointed out that even images are minified. So It is a good idea to keep things as small as possible, but the concern there is over the wire. When you're transferring things over internet or otherwise from a server to a browser, you don't really know. They could be off in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean using satellite Wi-Fi. And if you've wasted their very precious bandwidth with a huge image, they're not going to be able to use your app. So you got to keep things very small for the least common denominator connectivity. So that's why you're always thinking about how to make it smaller and faster. So we're not going to go through the whole page, but I do want to look at all the JavaScript. Now, can I look at this and tell you exactly what's going on? Absolutely not. I can tell you probably just by looking at their variable names, I could guess, but it depends on what they intended, and I have to dig it out and figure out, but it's not my job. This is their page. All that JavaScript. You know the statements, though. Look at that. That's not a for loop that iterates. We haven't talked about that specifically, but slot is an object. You know what an object is. This is how you say, I want to iterate over all the properties in my object. So we had, I think it was Rick's money or something, and there was an amount. So if this was Rick's money, the slot, you could say for var I, it shouldn't be I here, it should be like property or something, but that's their variable name, in slot. That's how you say, for all the properties in this object, I want to go through the loop one time. And it allows you to see, let me look at this property and that property one at a time. Switch case, and just syntax, that's an if statement. That's optimized to say, look at this thing, if equal that, then do this. You know the break? That jumps out, right? That means, okay, I'm done with the switch. I'm not going to get too much into that because we haven't covered it in today's review, but I'm showing you that the basics of the language, you know them. We're just going to practice them. Oh, what do you know? There's a... What's going on there? It's concatenation. Very good. So what's this thing here? Oh, you're reading too much into it. It's a variable. Yeah, it's only a variable. And how do we know it's a variable? Because they just declared it there. They say, that's my variable name. I'm going to set that equal to what? What's that thing? It's a string. They just, typed in a string there. That's concatenation. That says, take that. I want to smush it together with this thing on the right. That, we'd have to look it up. So that's a parameter. See, right here? They're passing in tag as a parameter. So I don't know what that is, but I'm assuming it's a string. Because 2 lowercase, what's that called? It's a function. It's a function attached to string variables. So that's all it is. So you can actually read this code if you take your time. Oh, what do you know? This is a random page on the internet, and what do they have in it? jQuery. I'm not lying to you. jQuery is everywhere. So the reason they're saying jQuery rather than $ is because that's their kind of setup for jQuery. They're adding something to jQuery. Look at that. You know that. $. You know $. Is just a jQuery synonym. They're doing that same thing. For loop says that's an object. I want to look at each one of those properties of that object. And that's where tag comes from. So in like 5 minutes, you can pull up a web page. You can kind of poke around in it. What are they doing? I'm curious. If you see something nice and interesting on the internet, and it's on the user interface, they cannot hide their code from you. You know how the internet works now, right? It's all on a server. In order for your browser to actually do its job, it has to have the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript in memory. Even if they wanted to, they couldn't keep you from it because that's the application. Now they can hide the server-based code, and we haven't got there yet. But anything in the browser, you have full access to, which means you can steal, borrow, not only from Google, but you can steal, borrow from any page on the internet if you see something interesting and if you can decipher it. You just need to find the code, and sometimes, the little links and the scripts up at the top, They save it in separate files. Look how easy this is. I'm going to go back up to the top. There's even a link here. If I click that link, it's going to pull it up in a separate window for me. This is it's an internet path, so that could be hosted somewhere else. But that's just a path to the file. Anyway, I'm not going to spend too much. Well, I want to finish up the top part. So we're still in JavaScript. Let's scroll down because we're going to start with HTML. There we go. There's the end head. So on line 379, they finally finished doing all their JavaScript head setup. So HTML tags. At this point in the page, who can tell me what we've seen? There's in just HTML.
You mean from a presentation point?
Nope, no, just if we were to start at the top of the page and read the code and forget about all the code except for the HTML, what tags have we witnessed reading top down?
Head, HTML, head, script.
We've seen HTML, we've seen head. There's one after inside of head that we've seen. Title. And
meta.
we've seen meta. We haven't really talked about meta because it's not really important, but there's the end head. So we're down on 379, and for HTML, we've just seen those very few tags. Now, what comes after head? The body. Right here it is. And it has class. What is this stuff?
Variable.
Somebody said variable. It's not quite a variable. What language is that? Well, this the body is HTML. Class is an attribute. Very good. That's the technical term for it. And to use the class, it's a class on an attribute. You're specifying what type of class. What's the language that we're talking about here? CSS. So we're saying anon and index2 must be CSS classes somewhere. They don't have to be, but that's really why you would do that. Oh, what do you know? You can actually have a script tag in the body. There's nothing stopping you. As a matter of fact, some developers like to put their script tag at the bottom of the page. Doesn't matter.
Are those visible then?
Nope. Anything in a script tag isn't visible. So lots more JavaScript.
Why would you choose CityPath?
Personal preference, or on the server side, when you generate a page, you might have an application structure that the top of the page and the bottom of the page is like a template, so you couldn't really change those easily because that's the same across every page in the site. But on this one page, you have a little piece in your... I'm jumping into like 3 weeks from now to explain the answer to this question. The question was, why might you put the script tag in the body rather than the head? On the server side, if you have a dynamic application, not a static, not like just an HTML page, dynamic means when somebody makes a request to the web server runs some code to generate the content that comes back. When you do that, you often have a template. So like the top and the bottom of the page and maybe the title, all of that's boilerplate, which means it doesn't change for any page on the site. That's where you start. And then you have like a little window, maybe part of the body, that it changes for every page that they load. In Slashdot, it's probably a list of comments pulled from a database. So the reason you might put the script tag in the body is because if you want this script related to only this one page in your code, that's just where you are. You're going to write it along with this page's instructions rather than in the boilerplate.
Keep it outside.
Yeah, so the template is usually you put the stuff in there that's common across all the pages, and you might want to put some JavaScript that doesn't relate to all the pages, just this one. But that's neither here nor there, and I'm completely guessing. Sounded good though, right? So there's some more CSS. You see how these links and these tags, you can be as messy as you want. Is this easy to read? It's not bad, but it's not good. That's better. See how it's indented? You can kind of see what's going on. This is inside of that, inside of that. So here we're inside of HTML. Who can tell me what an A is? Anchor. So anchor in HTML, that's a link. This is actually a bookmark. So this is like we didn't talk about bookmark, but if you have a link in Ahref, that will take you to normally another web page, right? Well, it is possible also to jump inside of a page. You just need to have a place to go. So this is like a little place. It's like a milestone. I don't know if you all have been to the Outer Banks before, but you have the little mile markers. And it's like, you know where you are just by saying I'm on mile 15 because it's long and skinny. This is like mile 15. So when you click on a link, to go to that, I'll show you what it would look like to actually have the link. To actually go there, so in this case you have a bookmark or a milestone. So this one actually has a go to top or something. That would be the anchor href. That would be the correspondent link that somebody would click on. I'm sure it's in this page. We can search for it. The hash here, and once again, David mentioned this, depending on which language you're talking, it means something completely different. So the hash sign, you know, in CSS, what does it mean? It's an ID, right? Well, in HTML, hash means in a link. On this page, that bookmark. So that just says, I don't want you to go to another page. I want you to navigate on this page. Go find the name of top of the page. That's all that means. So div, class, CSS, you know. What's going on here?
A list.
That's a UL, and a UL is unordered list. So unordered list, by default, when the browser renders it, what is it going to look like? Little bullet points. That's all it is. And then you're going to have one bullet point for each one of these guys, right? What is that?
List item.
List item. So each one of these guys, from LI to end LI, those are just going to be little bullet points. And inside of there, what do we got? We got a link. See, it's all the same stuff, just repeated different ways, depending on what you need to do. Now, this might be a little bit scary. It's not. So we have the outer list, and we have one element. In the second element, you don't have any text. Instead, what do you have? A sublist. So this is like a list inside of a list. And the sublist has its own items. And then finish that list item for the top list, and then we're back on the top list. And you go down. And eventually they'll get to the end UL. Right there. So, I'm not going to go through this whole page because I think you get it. You understand that, and this is just a random site on the internet. I could have done this on any site, really. Let's start talking about some code, though. So, HTML, let's go over the basic structure. Let's build a very simple page together. Let's build, and I'll tell you what, I've heard that some people like to try to type with me and try to keep up, and that's how they feel like they're learning it. That's not how you're learning it. You need to understand what it is I'm saying and not try to keep up with my typing. In order to help with that, everything I type here, I'm going to put into Git or I'm going to paste into Slack. Okay? So don't worry about it. Today, everything I type is going to be yours. You can look at it, reference it, copy, paste, whatever you want. I encourage you to write it yourself because I don't know if you're like me or not, but muscle memory, if I type it, if I force myself through the pain, there's something in there that clicks like, oh, yeah, I typed that once. I should know it. If you just look at it, I can't remember stuff if I just look at it. So let's start with a page. So where do we start? We had a blank page. Actually, let's do this together from scratch. Projects and Power. Create a folder, D5. For day 5. And let's go ahead and create a file in there. Just text file. Let's name it index.html. And Windows is going to say, wait a minute, I thought you were creating a text file. Are you sure you want to create an HTML file? You might not know what that is. Like, trust me, I know what HTML is. So one of the things that you can do with these fancy editors, that's kind of an oxymoron. I'm going to use Sublime. It doesn't really matter which one. I'm just more familiar with Sublime and the little menus. They all do the same thing. What they do is they give the ability of opening a folder. And this is important not so much now, but when we get into Elixir, we get into Ruby, we get into other languages, if you understand this is kind of the developer workspace, when we get to Ruby, you're not going to be hung up on the editor. You're going to already know how to do that. You're just looking at different code on the right-hand side. So open whatever editor. You can use Atom, Visual Studio Code. EM Editor, I did ask you to install that before the class started. EM Editor isn't really a coding editor. Why did I ask you to install it then? Because if you need to open up a gigabyte file of data, of like JSON or database output, most text editors are going to choke, and they're going to lock up your computer on Windows, and Windows isn't that hot when it comes to large files. But the editors themselves, Notepad is going to lock up for like half an hour. Don't even try it. So EM Editor has some black magic that allows you to open up large files, and it'll show you the first page of that data in like a second. It's great. But that's the only reason I really use EM Editor. For writing code, I would use Sublime or Visual Studio Code or Atom or even Visual Studio full-blown. So it doesn't matter. All we're doing is changing text. Whatever editor you choose, let's do an open folder. And I'm going to go to D5 for day 5. And I'm going to say select folder. You don't have to use Sublime. It doesn't matter. It might be a little bit different in the menus for Atom or for... Is anybody using Atom or Visual Studio Code? What's the menu item for those? It's is there an open folder option?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so it's exactly the same.
Yeah, it's file open folder. Yeah, open website or open project too.
Okay, so open project, open website. So, why are we doing this? Because if I wanted to have a second file, I can right-click on the folder over here, new file, and you can, I'm not going to put anything in it. I'm just going to say File, Save, or I could do Control-S, of course, but I'm going to slow it down today. And page2.html. Okay? What's nice about this is within a folder, within a directory, we can think about that as that's our project. So we don't get hung up having 20, I've seen some of you have like 20 different copies of the same text file open. It's like, I couldn't work like that because if I change it over here, I don't remember if I use this window or that window. Make your life easy. Keep it all together. Have one copy of the file open because if not, you're liable to make a change over here and overwrite the change you made over there. Just have one open. You don't have to use the editors like this, but it helps. So here, I can just move back and forth between the files. So I've got nothing written. I've just got 2 empty files. Let's actually do something. Let's create an HTML page. How do we start an HTML page? We could do doc type, what is it, exclamation point, space HTML. Like that? Okay. Notice I haven't been doing that because the browser's smart enough to figure that out, and I don't care about it. But yeah, if you want to specifically say, I'm HTML5 compliant browser, you know, get ready, I might throw a canvas or something at you. Okay. It's going to figure it out no matter what. So what's the first code that we're going to write? Yep. Just like that? You're already talking like a developer. It's like, on day 1, I said, type HTML. You would have typed HTML. Now it's like, why is he not putting the less than signs? Like, realize what you've already learned. So we got HTML. What's next? What's next? What do we want to call this page? Day 5, practice. No. There we go. So what comes after title? Close the head. This is a common pattern in all of coding. I don't care what language you're writing in. Whenever you open something, you got to remember to close it. As a matter of fact, you've seen an if statement now. All if statements I write, if the editor doesn't do it for me, I immediately create that ending, no matter what language I'm writing. Because if I don't, I'm going to forget it. And if I forget it, it's going to take me 20 minutes to figure out where did I miss that semicolon or where did I miss that closing brace. I don't want to go through that. So in VB6, you might say, if this is true, then they say end if. I would type out the end if immediately, because otherwise you're going to forget it. So the point here is, whenever you open something, like a head, remember to close it, because otherwise you're giving yourself grief. So what comes after the head? Body. Okay? We don't want to put anything in the page right now. We're just going to leave it blank. So if we're done with our whole body, what's next? We're just going to close the body. And notice, because I'm in an editor other than Notepad, it helped me out. It's like, oh, I know you're doing HTML. You type that. I'm going to see whatever you have open. I'm going to try to help you. It's nice to have a little bit of help from your editor. So we done? Got to close the HTML. That's the way you need to think about this. You need to say, I open something. I got to remember to close it. Okay? That's all this is. Now, if you wanted to indent, most often, because at the top level you've got head and body, people don't go through the trouble of indenting, because before you know it, you're writing code way over here and you're having to look over on that side of the screen. So usually you don't indent your body or your head. You just put it up there because there's only one of them. But pretty much everything else, to be able to read it better, you do indent it. So if we want to go back, let's save that. Just to show you that we've done well, let's go ahead and open this up. Does that look like success or not? That is absolutely success. Don't tell me it's not. Because we didn't write anything in the body. It's fine. We haven't done anything yet. But we created the structure of the page. And that's step 1. So let's have a red box. Just a red box. That's all we want. How do we do that? We can do it with CSS, but CSS is used to style, to add some flair to existing HTML. So we need the HTML to go with the CSS. So we need a div, or a span, or something else, a P, any of it will work. It doesn't matter, because with CSS, we can mangle whatever HTML we want, however we want. So let's use a div, because it's the most generic. So we're going to see that? No, we're not going to see that. It's going to work. It's doing what we asked it to do. Remember, computers are stupid. But all we ask the computer to do is, like, we want a generic container, and don't put anything in it. Let's put something in it so we can see it. This is our red box. So I'm going to save this. I did Control S right there. And I'm going to use my mouse today. I'm going to refresh the screen. And I'm lying to us now. It's not a red box, just some text. Question?
Did you hear my gasp from back here when you said you're going to use that?
Somebody was appalled that I'm going to use the mouse today. So yeah, I'm going to use the mouse, and to slow me down a little bit. This is the reload. I'm going to tell you, though, while I'm using the mouse, how I would normally do it. So that in the future, once again, talking 2 years from now, you will be able to attain that 99th percentile. Here, File, Save. Look over here. If you haven't ever noticed it, Windows actually tells you, or tries to tell you, here's the shortcut if you want to get faster. Control S. So I'm going to use that, and I'm going to use our taskbar down here, and I'm going to switch over the browser. Look at that. TGIF is the title. That's what a title does. Over here, we've got this is our red box. And I was going to open the Chrome Developer Tools. Let me see if I can find it without using F12. So, more tools, Developer Tools. There we go. And it even doesn't tell me about the F12. Control-Shift-I. Okay, so I'm going to click there. And that's our Developer Tools that we've seen. And let's take a look. This little button here, select an element. Let's go look and see why that box is not red. I'm going to click on this, and then it's kind of, I'm running hot, and I can touch that, and it's selected a piece of our page and highlighted it down here for us. Notice down here, automatically we get a display block, because that's the default styling it comes with any div. We didn't tell it to do that, it just automatically did it. Now, if I wanted to make this red, I could guess at it, or you could kind of lean on your editor, lean on your debugger. You see this little thing here called element style? That is Chrome's way of saying, if you want to temporarily change this thing, and it'll change it immediately, interactively, just change it right here. All you have to do is double click. And somebody help me out. In CSS, this is CSS, because that's what we use to style things. How do we make something red, or the background red? Background hyphen color. Like that?
No. Background hyphen color.
Y'all are thinking like a developer. Background hyphen color. You just kind of, you've seen this several times now. It's like, oh, that's bad syntax. It feels bad, doesn't it? It feels bad because you got that error, and it was painful to get that error and see that red message. Or it didn't happen, It's like, that's how you remember this. That's why you need to type it. You need to feel the pain. It's going to teach you. So the background color, and we could just say red. Just like that, right? And what do you know? Immediately, even before I finished typing it seemed, it was already changing. That's nice. What's another way to say red? Just so we know. It's what? FF. So FF is, this 6-digit number is hexadecimal RGB. R stands for red, G stands for green, B stands for blue. So by putting those things together, different shades of each one of those, you can generate, or you can result in pretty much any color. So FF is all the red. That's 255. There's 0 to 255 numbers in decimal in each one of these values. And it's kind of like a recipe, mixing up a color. So the recipe for red is, give me all the red, and none of the green, and none of the blue. That's all it means. And look, Chrome's really smart at saying, oh, you got a red. And you could even have, it looks like, I didn't know you could do this. Shift-click. Those are different ways of saying the same thing. Who knew? Okay, so we got a red box. It's not a very pretty box, though. I mean, it still looks like a line of text. Anybody have any ideas on how we make that look like a box?
Width and height?
Width and height. Let's do that. How do you add another thing here? Just double click. Or just single click, excuse me. So what's the CSS to set width and height? Width and height. Width. And what I'm doing, I'm typing, I'm pressing tab, and I'm going to type in width. You can specify width in several different types of units. So how big do we want this thing? Let's use pixels just for simplicity. 100 pixels. In pixels, you say px. Okay, that's a little bit small. Let's make it 200 pixels. Okay? Now, if I'm editing inside of this Chrome window and I'm setting some CSS properties, I can just press Tab and it assumes I'm going to continue editing. So I press tab, and I'm going to say we want to set the width and the height. The thing I like about this is you can see it change. So if you do something wrong or not what you want, you just change it immediately. You do have to spell this correctly. I've seen over the past few days some people have one digit missing and they misspell something and thinking, how did I write my bad code? It's not the code, it's that computers are very, very unforgiving. It has to be right, otherwise it's not going to recognize it. So width and height, let's make it the same height, 200. That looks more like a box. But I want my text in the middle. What's the CSS property that I can use to make it align? That's right, text align. Okay, we're getting there. So it's stuck up near the top. To make it look pretty, I kind of want it right in the middle. There are several ways to do that. Oftentimes there's more than one right answer in programming. To do that really easily, how do we, let's think about, actually I'm going to stop editing, I'm going to click over here, and I'm going to click on, here's another nice feature of your debugger. If you click on computed, and notice what we got here. This will allow you to see, here are the dimensions of this box. And I don't think, I was out of the room quite a bit with David. Did David go over this stuff? Okay. Okay. This is like the core of CSS, because how you make things show up the way you want them to, most of it's down to margins or padding. And the difference is, let's look at where this box is right now. It's sitting in the top left-hand corner because we didn't tell it to be anywhere else. And we read left to right. So it's going to put it up there in the top left-hand corner. If we want to have it off the left-hand side a little bit, outside of the edge of the box, that's called a margin. Here's a little trick that you're going to use over and over. Double-click on that little space there, and I'm going to type in 100. Press enter. I'm going to do that. Double click there. 100. Yeah. I'm going to make that 20 so people can see what I'm doing. So what did that do? That moved us. Yeah, I was hoping it would do something better than that. That moved us off of the left by 100, and it moved us down 20. If I want to move it up a little bit, double click, 10, moves up a little bit. So what's your takeaway here? Margin is outside of wherever you are, whatever you are. That's how far I want to be offset from anything around me. Moving the text in the box, that's padding. So I want to move it down so it's like halfway. We know it's height of 200, so about halfway is going to be how far off the top? About 100. So all you have to do is same thing. Double click, 100, press enter. Uh-oh, what happened? We got a lot longer. Because padding adds to the space in the box. That's fine. Looks better than it did. Here's something that shows you a little bit of the power of CSS. You don't often use. Some developers don't even know you could do this. But if I want to move this up above the top of the page, you can do margins in negative numbers. Not here, apparently. If you're on the page and you're not inside of a constrained container like the body here, you can move it and move it beyond the window. It's kind of like what we showed the other day with Yosemite showing there's a little window and you could move an image behind the window. Same type of thing. You can play with your margins to move it around. So it didn't even stick my margin there. So this is our red box. That's some ugly text. It's black. I want to change that text to something prettier. Let's make it white to kind of match the background. Look at this. It even says you tried to do a negative margin top. Invalid property. It didn't. Oh. You know what? Yeah, it was just PX. It did push it up. So you see how it's kind of up under there? Move it down a little bit. So yeah, syntax error, my fault. So red box. Now if we want to change that to white text, how do we do that? What's the CSS property?
Oh, color.
Color, yeah. Y'all are glossing over things now. By the way, I can say it, FFF. That's shorthand to mean 6 Fs. That's all it means. You don't often see this, but for instance, if I did this, you can do that if there's only one distinct in each of the RGBs. It's kind of shorthand. I don't do it often. I don't often see it done, but if you see it out there, you need to know what it means. So color, wait. Good enough. Okay. So now we're looking pretty good. Let's change that to be italicized text. And I know this is kind of plodding, but in the real world, this is the kind of stuff users ask for. It's like, I need that to be bigger and I need it to be italics because I get this guy over here at 75 and he really can't read that unless it's the way he likes it. Okay. So what do? How do we change that to be larger? Say let's make it 26-point font. Font size. 26 point. You should be able to read that. So you see, we created that from scratch. Not a big deal. Let's give it a border. You know, by default, you don't really have a border. The easiest way to do that is you could go over here and give it a border. So there are 3 things that can affect the position on the page for the most part. You've got margin, and this is important to understand in CSS, in layout. The margin happens outside of whatever you are. So it's the top right, bottom left. And I'm saying that in that order for a reason. I'll show you why in a minute. Top right, bottom left. Memorize that. That's outside. Padding is on the inside. So if I want to put, give me some left, right over here in the padding. Okay, I just go here. And let's give this 30 and 30. Okay, that looks a little bit better. Oh, by the way, you see as we change it over here visually, look at what it's doing. It is actually giving us the code that we need to go copy paste. So we're not losing anything. We're not wasting time here. All we have to do is when we're done, and we'll be done in just a second, we can double click there, copy it. As a matter of fact, just in case if I refresh accidentally, we're going to lose all that, so I'm going to do that now. Shame on me, I was almost going to use an Alt-Tab. Let's use the mouse, and we have this, and I just copied, pasted, and what's the attribute we use in HTML to specify some CSS? Style. Either one. That's my editor getting in my way. Sometimes it tries to be too helpful. Okay? So that's a comment in CSS. We don't need it. I'm just going to take it out. So I'm going to save that. Bad habit. File save. Click on the browser. Refresh. Now when you refresh, everything we just did is going to go away. All that was temporary. But we made it permanent by taking it out of that little editor over here, copy paste, excuse me, and we put it over here. This is part of our permanent code. We save the file and we're good. So we use the browser to help write code for us. This is kind of like in Excel. If you all know Excel a little bit, and you can say record macro, it's kind of the same thing, except your recording helped me write my CSS. Okay. Question?
Do you often use this?
Yes. The question is, do you often use this? Absolutely.
Just this way, right in developer tools, making things like this?
Yes. I think the real question is this kind of a newbie trick that you're teaching us, or do professionals do this? Professionals do this all the time. I don't use it because I use it because it will help me on a very complex, large page. If I'm talking about this little text box, I don't want to guess 2 or 3 times and reload the whole application to make sure it's right. I want to go there, type my CSS properties in, and make sure visually that it's what I want, so that I can know without having to reload multiple times that I just paste it there and I know it's right because I saw it. So absolutely, this is a professional tool. So padding, let's change this. I'm going to give it one more padding. Let's do 100 padding on the bottom. And I'm doing that for a reason. So padding, once again, that's inside the box. Give me some space from top, right, bottom, or left. And right now we've got 100, 30, 100, and 30. Now, I am introducing some small new things here. I'm filling in some gaps, but we're reviewing. So if I'm going too fast, or if you have questions, this should be more interactive. As a matter of fact, Richmond, let's see. If you have any questions, since this is kind of a long session, just paste them in here. We're gonna have a break in about, say, 5-10 minutes. So we're gonna see where we are. But if you have questions, go ahead and ask. My bad. I'm using the mouse. So we got a red box. We got a bunch of CSS here. So let's clean this up so it's not so verbose. CSS, because developers are lazy, in a good way, most of the time, they have some shorthand for things. So right here I've got padding top, left, and right. There is a different way of expressing margin and padding if you're going to set all 4 of them. So top, bottom, right, left, it's often the case that you want to have the same for the top and bottom and the same for the right and left. So what you often do is we have top and bottom as 100 and right and left as 30. So you can type it out and specify each side individually. This one is actually missing bottom because we didn't do it over here yet. So those 4 lines, and don't worry about me typing, I'm going to slow in a minute, is the same thing, is just saying padding, space. Okay, let me explain that. So line 16 is the same as line 18, 19, 20, and 21. This is shorthand syntax, and developers are lazy. You're going to see this all over the place. This means top, bottom, and that means right, left. There's another variant. If I wanted to spell it out, top, right, bottom, left, this is how you do that. These are the 2 different, you don't have to memorize a whole lot, but they're 2 different shorthands. And if you don't memorize it now, don't worry about it. The reason I'm showing this to you is not so you use it, just so when you see it in somebody else's code, you remember that, oh, I see what that's doing. It's not like, damn that Al, he didn't teach me anything. It's like, you see, I'm showing it to you, not so you have to use it, but just so you understand to read it. So top, right, it's kind of redundant here, but that's the way you say it longhand. So there are 3 different ways. This is the first way, this is the second way, and this is the third way. All 3 of those do exactly the same thing. Let's take a step back. Who doesn't understand what I just did there?
I just put my own words, so you instead of having the one with 4 lines of code, you can use the one that has all 4 pieces of the code.
It was a clarification question.
Line.
The answer is yes. The clarification was, so what you're saying is that these 4 lines of code, 20 through 23, are exactly the same thing as writing it this way with 1 line of code, or this way with 1 line of code. And that's absolutely right. So if you're a lazy developer, which way are you going to choose? You're going to choose either line 16 or line 18 probably.
Okay, so why is line, the one with 2 in it? Wow, you're having fun up there.
Ghosts.
You here?
I'm sorry.
Sorry,
In a
the
second, I'm just trying to get everything. Okay, no, I do have a question though. The second line 18, what was the order again? Top right, bottom
okay.
left?
So the question was,
I got it.
let's repeat the order. So this one is top, bottom, and right, left. This one is top. So visually, the way I remember it is top, right, bottom, left. So it's like you're drawing around the box. Top, right, bottom, left.
Or clock.
Yeah, like clockwise.
Clockwise.
So if we want to play with this, just to show you that I'm not lying to you, I'm going to comment this out.
Something's going on with your screen.
Yeah, I'm gonna fix that before we move on.
You would have to do all 4 if you have full
Is that happening on your laptop or just on
No,
the
it's
screen?
the screen.
Or UHD on projector correct now on this?
Yeah, it could be the lens going out.
Hopefully not.
Okay, sorry, Richmond, what we have here is, you probably don't have any problems because it's streamed directly from the laptop. What we've got is the projector here in the room is about to die, it looks like. So I'm talking to Winston-Salem, and you all are actually seeing this better than they are. So top, right, bottom, left. That's going to give you a stroke. Let's not do that. Yeah. Let's take a 10-minute break, relax, we'll come back because we're having technical difficulties.